Hi, Lisa Stones-Peck from Spellbound Miniatures today. Welcome to our YouTube channel, and this is our dressing table tutorial. It fits in with part of our bedroom series, so we've made the wardrobe and the chest of drawers and the sleigh bed so far. This week we're making the dressing table, and next week we'll make the stool and mirror to go with it. If you'd like these files, they're free in our membership group this month of March 2020, and you can also buy them individually on Etsy. So let's get started. I've cut all my pieces out of mat board today except for the one craft board layer, which will be red in your file, SVG file, which I use to layer up onto the top piece to make a nice beveled edge effect there. This is the dressing table, and it has a really cute working drawer too. So these are the pieces that you'll find in your SVG. Most of them are black, which is for mat board and basewood. For as long as it's about 1.5 mil. Mat board I find in the UK is slightly less than 1.5 mil, but anything up to 1.5 mil will be good. So you'll have the base piece, and the base has the leg cutouts but no drawer cutout. These are the middle pieces, and you can see this is the cutout for the drawer and the legs, and then the top piece doesn't have any cutouts at all. And then you'll have about 20 of these leg pieces, and I'll show you what I found is that I like to mark just with a little pencil, a little mark on all the top of my pieces. And this means when you stack them together, there's always a slight raised edge from the knife blade, and if you've got them all the same way up, they actually seem to stack cleaner and neater. So what we'll do with the legs is we literally glue, and I did 5 layers of this mat board, and you can dry fit it. Seems to fit really well with that gap. But if you had, say, a slightly thicker material, because this is just under 1.5 mil, you might only need 4. So do try that before you glue all of the pieces together. So I've glued them and I press them, and I have a bench block here that I press, so I would glue all of my sets together and then put this on top, weigh them all down while they dry, and then when it's dried I've got a new product, well, new to me, that I haven't used before, and it's Gorilla Glue, but it's brushable super glue, and it was really handy. So once I'd got them all glued and pressed like this, I took the brushable super glue and I brushed along the top and the bottom and these edges where the mat board is, and that created a really nice seal on the mat board edge. And then what I did was I filed the corners to shape the leg, and then the super glue had penetrated slightly and just helped it when I was sanding it not to fray up. So I'm going to go over to my jewellery bench now and show you how I did that to make and shape the Cabriole legs first. Today I'm going to show you how I made the Cabriole legs from mat board for the dressing table, and I'm going to use my it's one of my jewellery tools actually. It's a pendant drill, and it's operated by a foot pedal down here. So you press it down and the drill goes around, and it's a bit like a dentist drill, so apologies for that. If you haven't got one of those, then Dremels can have these attachments. It's a sanding, sort of a little sanding paper disc on a barrel, so you can get this for Dremels, and some nail technician handheld tools have a very similar version of this. So or you could do it by hand, but I much prefer to do it with this. It's much quicker. And what we did was, if you can see here, it's actually 5 layers of mat board sandwiched together. I don't know if it's going to close in on that. So the same shape, 5 times over, sandwiched together and pressed, and then I brushed super glue on the outside edges to kind of just seal that edge for when we sand it. So that's what I'm working with. Safety first, and let's have a go. So what I'm going to do first, I don't know if you can see, but handily the mat board, there's lines there from where the layers meet, And what the best way to do this is you hold your filing tip, I was going to say drilling bit, but it's a filing tip, at about 45 degrees angle to the edge, and if you hold it all the same angle all the way along and you just gently move it up and down, you'll notice that it kind of tapers and angles the edge, and once you hit this layer that's running along here, you know to stop. So the layers are a really good inbuilt guide of exactly how far down to file this edge. I don't do the tops of the legs here because they're the bit that's going to go into the dressing table, so I just do kind of this knee bit and then the back of the knee and all the way down. And again, the bottoms are flat, so I'll shape the toe and the heel but not the bottom bit. And you could hold this with something if you didn't want to get your fingers in the way. And if you can see, where does it focus? There, you can just see the edge. And I brought that down to the first line, and I'm going to work my way down. And then once we've got all the way down, I'm going to take it from 45 degrees to slightly less, and do the same on that top edge. If you're using matte board, you can use base wood, but if you're using matte board, it will start to eat into the paper. That's okay, because we'll put a layer of super glue on there anyway. So we're going to go with the same angle that we did this one on this edge now to soften this inside edge. And I think you can see there, it's just given it a really nice shape. Now, of course, you can go in and make even more sort of sanding and curves and work your way down to make it very narrow. But that's to achieve a nice edge, that's all you really need to do. Then you turn the piece over and you would continue to do the same on this side and the same on the back as well. So start with the 45 degrees and we're working down to that matte board layer. And I would go along with a piece of fine sandpaper and just rub off any excess matte board there and there before I put a layer of super glue on. And you can sort of, if you want to work on it again, I'd put a layer of super glue on, let that harden, and then go in again with your file and work your way round. So there we have it, basically shaped. If you've got some rougher bits of matte board, just take some very fine sandpaper and take the worst of it off. You can shape these feet in that way too, if you'd like to. And you really just want to be careful to keep this profile here, I think. The sort of the toe of the foot. And that's that. as I said, you can continue and shape it a little bit more. It's up to you, but even just taking the edges off, the corners, makes it look a little bit softer. And then, so laminate that, or glue that, sorry, with some super glue, and then you can paint it. So here we have that leg, nicely shaped. And you can see I did all 4 of them for this dressing table. And they've come out, I think, from mat board really well. So, assuming you've done all 4 legs now, or you can do this bit first, doesn't matter which order you do them. What we're going to do is we're going to take the middle parts. Now, for this dressing table, I used 6 inner layers. And I do press them under quite a heavy press. So you wouldn't think that that was 6 layers thick necessarily, but it is 6 layers plus the base and the top. So I'm doing 6. If I took the drawer out, you can see it's actually quite a small drawer. And if you went any less layers, you'd need to change the height of the drawer. So for ease, I'd do 6, and then that makes the drawer fit perfectly. And it's still quite a slim profile on that dressing table. So 6 layers on the middle, and I do them in pairs. It's easier to sort of line up 2 together and then another 2, whereas if you try and stack a lot together and then straighten them, it's going to be less easy to get nice straight edges. So I'll do 3 pairs first, and when they're all glued and set, then I'll put them all together. And then once they're all done, we'll glue those on the base, which becomes the bottom of the drawer opening. And then if you do want to use the craft board layer, I'd glue that first onto the top and press that so it's nice and flat, and then that goes on the top like that, and that will be the main part of the dressing table. And hopefully if you've got it nice and lined up, all these leg corner holes there will be nice and flush, and the legs will slot in very easily. So that's what I'm going to do now. These are perfectly symmetrical, so it doesn't matter which way up, but like I said, I've got all my tops facing one way. I just think that ends up with a better finish. And then line the edges up, checking all the way around. You want to be careful not to get too much glue if it does squeeze out, especially in the leg holes there, because that might prevent the leg from slotting in easily. But once you're happy that that is a really good fit all the way around, then I will press that under my bench block or my big granite slab over here and let those dry. Okay, while those layers are drying, we can make the drawer. It's quite a tiny drawer, and it's got a lovely curved front to fit in with the dressing table. So there's only 5 pieces to this. The largest one is the base, and then the next largest one was the front of the drawer, and then there's 2 smaller rectangles, and then this one is actually bigger than the sides, and that's the back. So the small ones are the sides, the back is the back, and they fit onto the base. So we construct the sides and the back first, and then we worry about fitting the curved front. Now what we want to do is the side of the drawer needs to come up and mimic that point. So we're going to sand the very that edge, so that would fit onto the base, and as the curve comes up there, the sanded edge meets that curve. So it's very simple. You just need a piece of sandpaper, and we're going to hold the drawer side at, if you imagine this was flat on your bench, 45 degrees to the sandpaper, and we literally move it in backwards and forwards in that motion, holding it at 45 degrees. Then we get a 45-degree angle. We don't need to do it very long. So I'm holding it either side. There's a 45-degree angle here, so it's not flat and it's not up like that. It's at 45 degrees. And we just go backwards and forwards, just a little bit. And then, I don't know if this is going to pick it up. Let me see. Can you see there? There's just a little angle. And so then, when we put it onto the drawer base, the angle follows that curve. That's all we need to do. And if doesn't matter if, once you're happy with the angle, if this piece sticks out the back a little bit, because we didn't make the drawer as deep as the actual hole in the dressing table, so that to allow for that side to stick out a little bit at the back, because it's more important to get the angle right at the front. So we're going to do that for both pieces. Make sure that you don't do the back by accident. The two side pieces are the same, and again hold it, and then just at 45 degrees move it backwards and forwards until you're happy that you've got a nice angle. And you can always just check it against the curve, and that's fine. So we just glue the side on first and make sure that you've got the inner angle is on the inside to meet that curve. We put glue on the bottom. And then just make sure it lines up with the front of the curve. Wipe off any excess glue. And make sure it just lines up with the edge and it's at a right angle. You see that? Then we get the base, and that goes onto the, not the base, we get the back, and that goes onto the base and up to the side. So we want glue on the bottom edge and one of the side edges. So that goes onto there. Can't get a good angle on that, there we go. And up to the side. And make sure that's square. The one thing you want to make sure is that on your sides they don't stick out over the base sort of that way, because they might not slide in and out so easily. You can always sand them down though. So there we've got the base, one side and the back, and so we literally making sure we've got the next side the right way up so that the slope is on the inside again to match that curve. So we want to put glue on the base, and then this time on the inside edge, because it needs to match up onto that back piece there. You could put the back on first, it's up to you which way round you do this. And then make sure the front is lined up. That's the most important part there. So just let that set up for 10 minutes, because when we fit the drawer front we don't want any of this to move. So we'll leave that set up for 10 minutes and come back. So meanwhile we can glue our now 3 pairs of layers for the middle together. I'm just looking where my X's are, so I've got it the right way up, so it's that way. And then once you're happy that you've glued them all together, you can just check that the leg will fit in each one. And so that will kind of help you know that they're all lined up. So I'm going to press these now while they dry. Okay, we're back to the tiny drawer. And I'm making my drawer front from matte board. If you want to, you could cut the same piece from 2 or 3 layers of craft board, then only glue them on one at a time. So curve 1 layer of craft board and glue that, wait for that to dry, and then glue the second and then the third if you want 3 layers. Don't glue them flat in this shape and then try and bend them, because you'll get the same thing. Now what happens is, when you go to bend matte board, you could, some people do soak it in water or PVA and water, but you run the risk of the layers separating then anyway. So I just gently apply some pressure and pull it round, and you will get creases, but that's okay. Just make sure you've got a nice even curve. If you need to, find something to curve it over. Yeah, that bottle's about good. But it will self-fit into the curve. And you can see, I don't know if that will show up. You do get some little wrinkles in the matte board, but that's okay. All you need to do is curve it enough so that it fits on to the front of that drawer and doesn't have any gaps. There's a little bit there, so I just need to curve that a little bit more. You can kind of squeeze it and pull it as you curve it, and that helps it. Okay, so that's a pretty good fit now. You can see that there. And then hopefully if your angles still stick out a little bit there, get a needle file and just take the edge off it again, so that when that fits on, you'll see it glues up and it will glue really sort of flush with those edges. So we need to put glue on all 3 edges there. And pop the front on and make sure it's lined up and flush with the bottom, and wipe off any excess glue, and also make sure that it's evenly spaced left to right, so that it's not too far over this way or that way, that it sort of meets the edges there and doesn't overhang them. And literally just hold that in place while it grabs. Nice and flush there and at the sides. And then it's good to put a little bit of pressure on these outside corners and also on the bottom. And it's difficult to clamp this one, so I suggest just hold it while it dries. Okay, once that's dried enough, that you're happy it's not going to move, you'll see you'll probably have at least one, if not two, little creases there from the mat board. And it's really easy to get rid of those. So I'm going to use this brushable super glue. And I literally just brush a layer on the top. And I'm happy to also just put a very thin sort of brush, just very light over these top and bottom edges, only because then when you start sanding, they're kind of been sealed already. You don't need a massive amount here, just the side of the brush, just enough to seal that mat board. And make sure that on the drawer front, it goes all the way up to each edge, and let that dry. Okay, so we've got our glued and pressed middle layer. And you can see how it's a lovely, lovely smooth curves on this piece. We've got the base, so we're going to glue that onto the base. That is the recess for the drawer. Actually, that was a wrong drawer, prototype drawer. There we go. See how it fits in with just a little gap at the back. And then we will glue the top on. So I'll just do that now. One thing to remember when you're gluing the middle onto the base is to put the glue on the middle and put that onto the base. You don't want to put glue over the whole of the base because you'll end up with glue where the drawer recess is. And then similarly, when we're going to glue the top on, put the glue on the central part. And then making sure you've got the top the right way up with the layer of craft board on the top. You position that on there, and you just really want to make sure that you've got a nice even gap all the way round that you would naturally have with a tabletop. You could dry fit this and put a pencil mark to guide you if you're really unsure, but it's quite simple to just manoeuvre it so that you can see there's a nice even gap all the way round. If you get any glue squeezing out, you can take that off with a cocktail stick. And so I'm going to press this whole thing now and make it really nicely sandwiched together while it dries. So once the super glue's dried on your drawer front, get some sandpaper and then just lightly follow the curve from either side and go over any wrinkles. And you'll find that they start to come out. And then just get the super glue and brush another layer, wait for it to dry, and then sand that out, and continue to do that until you're happy that you've got it nice and smooth. And if I take this drawer out here, I've got some faded paintwork in there because I'm going for another vintage look on this one. You'll see, can you see? I managed to get it actually quite smooth, especially once it's been primed and rubbed down again and then painted, and you wouldn't know that that was matte board or that it ever had a wrinkle in it. So keep doing that until you're happy with the finish. Just add some more super glue, sand it down, and you'll soon have a nice smooth drawer front. If you find when sanding you get, or in any part of construction, your mat board starts to lift, literally make sure that you lift it away properly, keep your fingers out of the way, and you can just put some super glue in there. Let it sink, it sort of soaks in a little bit, and then just hold that down ideally with something, if you've got something, some clamps or something, and just sort of press that in, and it will seal the super glue back up again. Seal the mat board layer back up again. Okay, now the main part of the dressing table is glued and pressed, and if you'll have done 4 legs, we simply want to glue them in place. So where's my glue? There we go. You want to put the glue on the top and the back, but you don't want to come all the way down because that sticks out. So if you imagine only halfway down, you don't even have to do that, and the sides, just enough to hold it in place. Don't want lots of glue squeezing out everywhere for this one. And the most important thing is make sure you've got your leg the right way round. So if it's the front of the dressing table, you want the leg facing out, and then similarly for the back, I like mine going that way, not that way. You could do it that way, but that's personal preference. So slide that in. If there's any glue, wipe that away that squeezes out. Get it central. Was that off camera? I hope it wasn't. And press it that way first and then down that way, and it will soon grab. Don't put any pressure on it while it's drying, i.e. that way, until you've got all 4 legs in. And that's as simple as it is. So continue round and do all 4 legs, and then I would suggest letting it dry that way up first. So there we have the finished dressing table, complete with working drawer. To create the handle, I drilled a hole through the drawer front, used a flat-headed eye pin, created a little loop and put a jewellery finding through there. And as I said before, if it's a little sticky, the drawer, just file it down on the edges where you think it's sticking. I'm going to age this a little bit more and put some of those water slide transfers on to match the wardrobe, and it'll be done. I'll put the photos at the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed this. I really liked making this one. It's one of my favourite pieces so far. If you haven't yet subscribed, do subscribe and click notifications, and I'll see you again soon.